Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday, Wellness Warriors. I hope you are doing fabulous today. It's been a weird week, and I debated on whether or not to do a live today, but I missed last week, and I am usually extremely consistent, and I want you all to feel like you can depend on these, especially if they help you. So I owe you a tiny bit of an explanation, and I'm not going to go into a lot of details. But first, let me just start by saying, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this until afterwards, just let me know you've seen it, especially if there's something about it that's touched you specifically. I don't have my normal script. I had one made up from last week, where I was going to talk about the stories we tell ourselves, kind of, that we don't have to believe everything we think. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit today, but I will save that for hopefully next week, assuming that everything continues on its current positive trajectory, which I have no doubt at this point that it will. So just remember that Facebook doesn't always show me all the things. And so if you say something, you ask a question, you make a comment, and I don't respond while I'm live, then it's just because I didn't see it, and I will at some point later today. Also, I just want to say that Facebook has changed some of their policies, and they're going to start removing live videos after 30 days. So I'm going to have the option of downloading all of my live Wellness Wednesday videos. And so you may see these videos reposted in a Wellness Wednesday album, because if they're posted as recorded videos, apparently they will stay, but live videos will be taken down after 30 days. So if you try to go back looking for old ones, probably after next month, you may struggle to find them. But I'm going to work on a solution for that. In any case, a quick explanation as to last week. Last week, because my boyfriend was having a procedure, I moved Wellness Wednesday. It was my intent to do it at 7 o'clock in the evening instead of in the morning. And yes, I'm a little early this morning too, but there's a reason. And then after the procedure, I just wasn't in the headspace to get on and talk about wellness. And I'm not going to go into a lot of details. Here's the facts. We both tend, I have no problem talking about things that happen with me. But outside of, to a degree, but outside of that, we tend to be pretty private. We don't like to post things. We're not looking for sympathy. So there's been very little about it, but I just wasn't in the headspace on Wednesday to address anything other than my head being up my own rear end, essentially. And last week's procedure has led to another procedure that'll be happening this week. And again, I'm not going to go into details about that, but it really bothered me to not feel like I could go on and talk live, because every time I encounter a new situation, I run into somebody that I didn't know was watching regularly, and that just fills my heart when somebody's like, oh, well, when you said this on your Wellness Wednesday, and I'm like, oh, you watch? And sometimes it's people that are watching later on because they can't do it while I'm live. And that's wonderful to me. So I appreciate every single one of you that watches, whether you're on live and you're actively interacting, or whether you're watching later by yourself. If there's, for me, Wellness Wednesday, if it impacts one person in a positive manner every week, it's a huge deal. And I don't necessarily have to know that, but it always makes my heart really happy when I do. So, like I said, I just wasn't in the headspace. I tried, but my brain was doing its own thing. And just for the record, everything is fine. But at the time, it didn't feel like it, because here's the facts. No matter, there's a reason why I call this recovery from anxiety and depression instead of recovered. And it's because when we've lived with something like this for our entire lives, no matter how good we think we are at managing it, or how good we actually become at managing it, the truth is that at some point, excuse my language, we're going to get bitch slapped. We're going to get a backhand. We're going to feel like the rug has been pulled out from under us. and we're going to scatter sideways. It's the nature of life. So essentially that's kind of what I felt like. But as I've said before, how we react to things, is probably 90% of the battle. And in my case, when I say revert to training, that's a phrase I stole from a friend of mine that was in law enforcement, or is in law enforcement, but years ago. Because in law enforcement, or military, you're trained to react, and you spend months, years, whatever, training in that reaction. And that reaction is very specific. Well, when we spend our whole lives with learned behavior patterns or anxiety, depression, whatever, we also learn how to react a certain way to certain things. And I hope I'm not talking too much in circles here. We also learn to react a certain way to certain things. And it's not always an adaptive, great reaction. But what happens is when we do get that backhand, or we feel like the rug has been pulled out from under us, no matter how good we've become at managing our anxiety, our depression, whatever the case may be, at some point we are going to revert to training. We are going to feel like we just lost everything we gained, and we're going to backflip, and tumble backwards a little bit and feel like we've lost everything we gained. I mean, I don't know another way to put it. And that's essentially what happened last Wednesday. What happened last Wednesday was nothing short of a miracle. And I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to go into the details, and I don't mean to be vague. The details aren't necessary to what I'm trying to say. But when you learn information you didn't expect, it's scary. It doesn't really matter if it's good or bad. When you learn information you didn't expect, it's scary. When you're faced with something that you don't know necessarily how it's going to turn out initially, it's really scary. And so for me, immediately, things that I haven't experienced in a very long time, or that I've been able to catch as they start and put my hand up and say no, they just started. The brain spin started, the anxiety brain spin with all the what ifs and what if this and what if that and what if this and what if that, over and over and over again, like literally on repeat. Y'all, I experienced more intrusive thoughts in that first 2 days than I have in years. And it was a struggle. So that first day, it was amazing what a different trajectory my brain went on once I got a little bit of sleep and a little bit of prayer, and a good run. Those three things kind of helped set me straight a little bit. I was still struggling with the brain spin, and I was still struggling with some seriously intrusive thoughts. But I began to, as I say, remove my head from my butt. And I began to start to move forward, and the fog kind of cleared, and I saw all the good that was happening around me. And I'm grateful for that, because I never used to be able to see that until years afterwards, looking back, like a hindsight thing. So it, to me, proof when I was in doubt, when I was reverting to training, and I was like, oh my gosh, and just in that brain spin. And I know I'm not being super eloquent today. And I apologize for that, but this is called off the cuff for a reason. And it's because, like I said, I don't really have a script. I'm just kind of rambling here. But there's a point to this, I promise. Once I started to come out of that fog, as much as I was still struggling with those thoughts, I started to see the miracles. Sometimes things happen that seem really scary at the time, but then you realize that they're happening because they're drawing attention to something else that needs addressing. Before it becomes a problem. And that's essentially what has gone down. So I promise you, when I say, if you're sitting there listening to me and thinking, oh my gosh, what is she not telling us? Everything is going to be fine. I promise that. I know that in my heart of hearts. But because sometimes things happen, like I said, to draw attention to other things. Years ago, I went into the hospital with a rupturing appendix. Years ago, like in 2000, I went into the hospital with a rupturing appendix. And they found other things going on in there while they were in there doing surgery. And the surgeon knew that there was something else going on, but he wasn't 100% sure. And he was terrified to take the time to run more tests because he was afraid he would lose me if he did. That the time it would take to run those tests and wait for results to verify that he would lose me, because he was also 100% sure that my appendix was ruptured. So sometimes we just have to understand that even though things seem scary at the time, they're not as scary as what's possible, and that they were brought to a head for a reason, to draw attention to other things so that those other things could be addressed before they become a problem. But it's hard when you're greeted with information that you didn't expect. It's hard to get past that initially. So like I said, brain spin, intrusive thoughts, and it was a struggle. So while I may have reverted to training and I may have had to struggle extra with the things that were going on, and and these thoughts in my head like I haven't had in years, just so much doubt and so much fear, and so much questioning, I did remember a little bit of my new training, and I did realize that I needed to get out and hit some pavement with my running shoes, and that I needed to pray because my faith is very strong. I don't talk about it a lot on Wellness Wednesday, but my faith is very strong. Good morning, Miss Carla. It's nice to see you. And so, like I said, a night's sleep and a little bit of pavement therapy and some prayer, and I started to begin to come out of that fog and see all the blessings that we were being surrounded with. So what I'm trying to say here is that when you get that bitch slap, and hopefully Facebook doesn't have a problem with that word, when you get that backhand, because inevitably you will, no matter how healed you feel you are, or how much you think you've dealt with a situation. You know, I just had a mock group counseling session for school last night. And that was talked about how, as a counselors, when we become counselors, there are going to be times where things that we thought we had dealt with and put away a long time ago are going to be triggered. So inevitably, no matter how much you feel like you are recovered from your situation, something is going to happen that's going to be like a great big face bump, like a brick on your head, and you're going to revert to training. You're going to revert to those coping mechanisms that you learned a long time ago, whether they were good or bad. And that's a lot of times for a lot of us, that's the anxiety and depression response, the fight, flight, or freeze. So fortunately, as I said, once I began to come out of the fog, I started remembering a little bit of my new training, the new training that I've worked so hard on, which was how to dismiss those intrusive thoughts and focus on the good I was seeing that was coming out of this, and focus on my faith and focus on what was in front of me and the things that I could control, like learning more about what was happening so that I understood how things were going to go. So I'm going to tell you that when you get that backhand, it's really important to give yourself grace, because when we're facing unknown things, and then on top of that, we feel like we've taken a complete backslide into old habits, old maladaptive habits. So on top of everything else, then we start beating ourselves up. We start beating ourselves up, and we're like, oh my gosh, how could you be like this? Why are you doing this? Why are you, and it just adds to that spin. So I'm going to tell you that you need to get, and this is as much for me as it is for you. We have to give ourselves grace. We are human. We have ingrained coping mechanisms that we learned many, many moons ago. And sometimes those just get triggered and rise to the surface. But we have to do the best we can within the space that and the information that we have at the time. I have a lot more information now. I know that what has to happen is a lot less risky than what I initially assumed. And that everything is really going to, it's going to be okay. Medical staff is amazing. Our small army of people around us is amazing. And so we have to give ourselves grace that when we have that little backslide, that we're doing the best that we can do with the information that we have. And when we have more information, we're going to do better. For me, coping and distracting myself from those intrusive thoughts involved a lot of research, and it involved a lot of asking questions and trying to understand how we got here and you know, what the risks were, and that it could be fixed very easily, really. And that it was going to be okay, that it didn't have to be the end of the world. And just for the record, no, there's no cancer or chronic illness or anything like that. This is just an unusual thing, an unusual situation, and it's going to be handled. But like I said, I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but I promise you, as you know more, you can do the best you do. So one of my coping mechanisms is to research and ask questions, and the healthcare staff probably thinks I'm nuts sometimes, but I feel better when I have specific answers. And we got the rest of what we needed yesterday. So, with that said, I would encourage you that if you're really struggling, the best thing that you can do is look for the helpers and look for the miracles, because they are there. I'm going to pull a Fred Rogers. Mr. Rogers always said, look for the helpers. They are there. The miracles are there. If you choose to look for them, if you choose to focus on what the big scary thing is at the time, no matter what it is, no matter how small or how not scary it is, if it's scary and big to you and that's what you choose to focus on, it is just it's going to grow and it's going to become scarier. So look for the helpers, look for the miracles, look for the good news that's wrapped up inside the bad, because there's always good news wrapped up inside the bad. And in this case, the good news is a lot bigger and it's a lot better than the bad. Because as I said, sometimes things happen that happen on purpose to draw attention to other things. So, all right, enough talking in circles. Look for the helpers and look for the miracles. This is where gratitude becomes really important. And as much as I talk about gratitude, recognizing that things could be much worse. It's just like a car accident. If you were in a car accident and your vehicle's totaled, but you walk away safely, you might be focused initially on the car accident, and the damage to your vehicle until you've had a little time to process and that brain spin stops and you're able to go, oh, but you know what? It's just a car and I am okay. Or, you know, the loved one that I was carrying in that car is okay. And those things become more important. So the big scary is always going to be big scary until we can start looking at it differently. So look for the helpers and look for the miracles, because they're there. Find the silver linings. They are there. When things seem ugly like they did that first day, look for the way things are aligning to make it work out. Whatever your beliefs are, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in the universe, a bigger plan, whatever it is, there's a lot of different things to believe in out there. But I can promise you there's a plan. Whatever your beliefs are and whatever that looks like, there is a plan. And part of that plan is us and how we respond and how we react to things. So give yourself grace in those moments where you've been backhanded or where you feel like the rug's been pulled out from under you. Give yourselves grace, because I can't think of a time where I've ever felt like that, where I haven't come out better on the other side. Good morning, Danielle. A friend told me yesterday, and she's not wrong, and she has said this to me before, in description to her own self, that, and she and I both believe in God, and if you don't, that's okay, because this can apply to whatever your beliefs are. When we struggle to stop worrying, sometimes if we say we're going to stop and we do the things that make it look like we're going to stop, but we don't put it down, and in my case, put it in God's hands and leave it there. Leave it there. Trust that it's going to be taken care of and leave it there. We'll get our arms broken. If we can't let go, we're going to get our arms broken so that we have no choice. And that was profound to me at the time, because I have been struggling since before last week with letting go of certain things, with letting go of situations that I can't control. It's been a struggle. It's been a theme for a couple of months now. And now I feel very strongly that my arms are broken and that I'm being forced to let go and trust that I've done all the things that I should do. We've done all the things that we can do. And now it's in the hands of our God, or the universe, or whatever it is that you choose to call it. But she's not wrong. This is absolutely a thing. We will find ourselves in situations when we can't let go of control that we should not be trying to have anyway, where we will not have a choice. And in that moment, we may find more control than we thought we had, but in a different way, and more peace than we could have imagined. And when I felt like I had to finally put the concerns down and the worry down and the brain spin down and be like, okay, I have what I need to know that I just need to trust that this is going to work out. Guess what? I started to get all the proof that I ever needed that it was going to. I just had to get out. I had to step off the hamster wheel to get there. So that's what I'm trying to tell you today. Give yourself grace, because eventually, like I said, you are going to have a rug pulled out from under you, or you're going to feel like you've been backhanded or bitch slapped by life. And you're going to revert to training, and you're going to revert to those old coping mechanisms. But if you give yourself a little bit of grace and a little bit of time and don't unpack there and wallow in it, believe me, I wanted to, and just continue to move forward, focusing on the things that are within your control, and leave the rest up to God or the universe or whatever the case may be for you. You will learn more, you will get more information, and you will be able to get better and progress. And I feel like I'm talking in circles, but I'm hoping this is speaking to somebody that needs it right now. Again, look for helpers and miracles, because they are there. In our case, like I said, there's a lot of privacy. We've both very specifically said we don't want Facebook posts. We don't want all the sympathy and all of that. But what I am okay with is prayers. So what can you do for somebody when they're in a situation like this? If you have a loved one that's in a situation like this and you feel kind of like you can't do anything or you don't know what to do, sometimes just offering. There's been a lot of, if you need anything, we're here. And you have no idea how much peace that brings to know that there's basically a small silent army back there waiting. And especially when you don't know what you're going to need, because it's scary right then, right? So what can you do for someone else? You can offer just, hey, if there's anything I can do. You may never ever have to fulfill that, but if your intent is good and you want to help and you just don't know where to start, it's okay to offer that. Pray for them, good thoughts, vibes, whatever, get out into the universe. Whatever your beliefs are, those things matter. I truly believe that whatever your beliefs are, whatever the receiving person's beliefs are, it's still positive. It's still good energy. It's still prayer, thought, however you want to look at it. And there's something that happens in between the two, regardless of beliefs, that turns it into what they need, what that recipient needs. Does that make sense? Check in. A lot of times we don't check in on people that we know are struggling. And I've been guilty of this, people that we know are struggling, because we don't want to bother them. We know they're overwhelmed. We're afraid to add to their plate. And you know what? I've had a lot of people text, message, check in, and it's wonderful. And if I don't feel like I'm in a capacity to respond to them right then I wait. And that's the biggest thing we have to understand, is that if we do that check-in, we have to remember that it may be a little bit before they can get back to us, or they can answer, or they may see it and they may react to it with a heart, good morning, Miss Stacy, or whatever. But they just may not be able to respond right then. And we just have to know, when we do that, when we check in, that means they know we're thinking of them. And we have to trust that that's enough for right then, and not feel hurt or wounded if we don't hear back right away. And most importantly, for the person that's in that situation, sometimes we may feel helpless. We may feel like, that, like I said, that backhand, that bitch slap, that we can't do what needs to be done to get to the other side. Because we're afraid. And I said, we've reverted to those old coping mechanisms. We've reverted to training, but we can do what needs to be done. We are amazing creatures. We are each unique in our own way. We have our own unique skill sets. And sometimes those things are things we don't even know we're capable of until we are in that situation. Kind of like that necessity is the mother of invention thing. There may be things we don't think we're capable of, that we truly are, when we're given no choice. And it's because, and again, a little plug on what I'll talk about next time, because when we have no choice, we stop telling ourselves the stories. We stop telling ourselves that we can't, and we just forge forward and we do what's got to be done. So I hope something I said made some sense today, because I felt really strongly that I needed to talk a little bit about this. So again, I encourage you, when you feel like you've gotten that rug yanked out from underneath you and you feel like you're reverting to training, and that everything you've gained in your recovery with depression, anxiety, whatever, maladaptive coping, when you feel like that's all been yanked away from you and you've lost it all, you haven't. It's there. You just kind of have to do something to reset yourself. Sometimes that might just be a good night's sleep. It might be a workout. It might be some prayer, some meditation. Y'all, haven't meditated in a week, because I haven't stopped to make the time for it. But I've prayed. I'm praying constantly in my head all day long. And making sure that I'm not doing things I shouldn't be doing, like stuffing my face with sugar and caffeine, which is just going to ramp things up. So I may not be doing all the things I know I should be doing to help me handle things better, but at least I'm not going out of my way to do things I'm not supposed to be doing, right? So again, give ourselves grace and do the best we can with the situation at hand until we can do better. So just remember, whatever your faith is, like I said, universe, God, Buddha, Mother Earth, there's all kinds of things out there, all kinds of beliefs out there, and they are all out there for a reason, and whatever yours is, it's very real to you. Remember that sooner or later, if you try to control too much, you will be put in a situation where you don't have a choice but to let go. And that's okay too. But look for the helpers, look for the miracles. And if you have someone else, a loved one, somebody close to you that's experiencing this, don't be afraid to check in on them. They will get back to you when they can. Whatever your beliefs are, whether they're the same as theirs or not, those good thoughts, those good vibes, those things out in the universe, those prayers, they get where they need to go in whatever form they need to be in. So I appreciate you. If you've been on here and you've been listening to me talk in circles for the last 30 minutes, I know I was a little early today. And again, I apologize for not being able to do last week's Wellness Wednesday. We are going to talk about the stories we tell ourselves. At this time, I plan to be on next Wednesday. But at that point, we may be, coming up on a discharge date. So I don't know what that's going to look like yet. But I will keep you posted on the next episode as I learn. And, that one will be talking about the stories we tell ourselves. Because that's important and it's had a lot to do with what's here. So, all right, that's enough of my word salad for the day. I hope you all are well. I hope this next week is amazing for you. And if you are in that situation where you feel like you're getting the rug pulled out from under you, or you're getting that life backhand, then I encourage you, to just give yourself grace and do the best you can do with what you know until you know more, and then do better. It is okay if you have a little backslide, if you have a little misstep, that it doesn't mean that you've lost all of your recovery process, whatever that looks like. Like I said, anxiety, depression, whatever. It doesn't mean you've lost it all. It just means you've reverted to training for a little bit, and that as you start to come out of the fog, some of those good habits and that better training is going to kick in. I promise. So you can do what needs to be done, and it is going to be okay. All right. I love you all. I thank you for watching. I hope if you found this helpful in any way, shape, or form, please feel free to share. Let me know you've seen it. Let me know if you have questions. I'm glad I decided to get on today, because I just know in my heart that that somebody else besides me needed to hear this today. So look for the helpers, look for the miracles. And if you're not in that situation, be a helper or be a miracle. Have a fabulous day. I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. And above all else, be well. Bye.